The leather seat of the Lincoln swallowed me whole. It smelled like money. Like old money and new leather and something else I couldn't name. Something clean and expensive. Mr. Sterling slid into the driver's seat and the engine started with a whisper. Not a cough. Not a sputter. A whisper. The kind of sound that came from an engine that had never known neglect. I watched my Uncle Harold through the tinted window. He stood frozen in the driveway, the bag of frozen peas melting at his feet. His mouth kept opening and closing like a fish that had been thrown onto a dock. Behind him, the gate swung open again. Mark stepped out. Then Brenda. Then my Aunt Patricia. They all stared at the Lincoln like it was a spaceship that had landed in their perfect little subdivision. Drive, I said. Please. Mr. Sterling pulled away from the curb. I watched my family shrink in the side mirror. Mark was already on his phone. Brenda was pointing at the Lincoln. Harold was still standing there, not moving, not blinking, just staring at the space where we'd been. We drove in silence for a few blocks. Past the manicured lawns and the identical mailboxes and the SUVs parked in every driveway. Past the golf course where my uncles played every Saturday morning while I was under a truck somewhere, trying to earn enough to keep the lights on. Where are we going? I asked. My office, Mr. Sterling said. It's downtown. About 20 minutes. I nodded. My hand was throbbing. I looked down at it and saw the knuckles were already swelling. The skin was split in two places. Tiny beads of blood welled up and dripped onto my coveralls. You should get that looked at, Mr. Sterling said. It's fine. Your hand is bleeding on my leather seats. I looked down. A few drops had already fallen onto the tan leather. I pulled my hand away like I'd been burned. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'll clean it. I'm kidding, Michael. He glanced over at me. A hint of a smile on his carved stone face. The seats are insured. And frankly, that punch was a long time coming. I read the deposition. I know what your uncle did to your father. What he's done to you. I stared at him. How do you know about that? I know everything about you, Michael. That's my job. When Theodore named you as his sole heir, I had to do my due diligence. I had to know who I was dealing with. And what did you find out? He was quiet for a moment. The Lincoln hummed along the highway. The city skyline was starting to appear in the distance. Glass and steel and chrome. All the things I'd spent my life looking at from the outside. I found out that you're a good man, he said. A hard-working man. A man who's been dealt a terrible hand and never complained about it. You paid your ex-wife's medical bills after the divorce. You never told anyone. You take care of your neighbors. You fix their cars for next to nothing. You visit your father's grave every Sunday. Rain or shine. You bring flowers. You talk to him. My throat tightened. How do you know that? I told you. I know everything. He paused. Your father was a good man, too. He didn't deserve what Harold did to him. What did Harold do, Mr.? Sterling's jaw tightened. I think that's a conversation for the office. There are documents you need to see. But I can tell you this much. Your father was the rightful owner of the business Harold sold. Theodore left it to him in a trust. Harold forged the documents. He stole it. Every penny. The world tilted. I gripped the door handle. What? Your father knew. He confronted Harold about it. But Harold threatened to go to the police. He had forged documents that made it look like your father was embezzling. It was a lie, of course, but your father couldn't fight it. He didn't have the money. He didn't have the resources. So he let it go. I closed my eyes. I saw my father in his garage, hunched over an engine, his hands covered in grease. I saw the way his shoulders slumped sometimes, like the weight of the world was pressing down on him. I saw the sadness in his eyes that he never talked about, he never told me. I said, he didn't want to burden you. He wanted to protect you from it. He thought if you didn't know, you wouldn't have to carry the anger. Mr. Sterling's voice softened. He was wrong, of course. You've been carrying it your whole life. You just didn't know what it was. The city grew closer. Buildings rose up on either side of us. Pedestrians on sidewalks. Buses and taxis weaving through traffic. I'd been downtown maybe a dozen times in my life. Always for something. A court appearance for a traffic ticket. A job interview that went nowhere. A visit to a hospital when my mother was dying. But this was different. This time, I wasn't crawling. I wasn't begging. I wasn't hoping. Mr. Sterling pulled into a parking garage. The Lincoln's headlights reflected off concrete pillars. He found a spot near the elevator, killed the engine, and turned to me. Before we go up, I need to tell you something, he said. Theodore Radcliffe was your grandfather's brother. He left the family when he was 22. He'd had a falling out with your great-grandfather. About money, about principles, about a dozen different things. He went to California, built a real estate empire from nothing, never married, never had children. You were his only living relative on that side of the family. Why me, I asked. I never even knew he existed. Because you remind him of your father, Mr. Sterling said. He kept track of the family from a distance. He knew what happened. He knew how Harold treated your father. He knew about the fraud. He tried to intervene once, years ago. He offered your father a job. A good one. Your father refused. Why would he refuse? Because he was proud. And because he didn't want to accept charity. Mr. Sterling paused. Theodore admired that. He respected it. And he never forgot it. When he knew he was dying, he set up this trust. For you. So you would have what your father should have had. So you could make the choice that your father never got to make. What choice is that? The choice to forgive, Mr. Sterling said. Or to hold them accountable. We walked through the parking garage. Past the luxury cars and the SUVs and the occasional sedan. Past the signs that told me I was in a world I didn't belong to. But I wasn't intimidated anymore. Something had shifted inside me. Something that felt like armor. Mr. Sterling's office was on the 22nd floor. The elevator ride was smooth and silent. When the doors opened, I stepped into a lobby that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Marble floors. A reception desk made of glass. Art on the walls that I didn't understand but could tell was expensive. A young woman at the desk smiled at Mr. Sterling. Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling. Good afternoon, Helen. This is Michael Radcliffe. He's with me. Would you hold all calls? Of course, sir. He led me down a hallway. Past doors with brass nameplates. Past offices with windows that looked out over the city. Past paralegals and associates who nodded at him with respect. At the end of the hallway, he pushed open a door and gestured for me to enter. His office was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 walls. A desk that looked like it had been carved from a single tree. Bookshelves filled with law books and leather-bound volumes. A sitting area with 2 leather chairs and a couch. The kind of office that told you the man inside it had never lost a case. Sit, he said, pointing to one of the chairs. Can I get you something? Coffee, water? Water would be good. He walked to a small cabinet and pulled out a bottle. He handed it to me. I noticed his hands were steady. No tremor. No hesitation. The hands of a man who was completely in control. I unscrewed the cap and drank half the bottle in one gulp. The water was cold and clean. It felt good going down. I've been doing this work for 30 years, Mr. Sterling said, settling into the chair across from me. I've delivered a lot of bad news and a lot of good news. But I have to tell you, this one is unusual. Theodore's estate is worth approximately $42 million. That includes 3 commercial properties in Southern California, a portfolio of stocks and bonds, a trust fund that's been accruing interest since 1987, and a bank account that hasn't been touched in over a decade. I waited for the words to land. They didn't. They floated in the air between us like confetti. I tried to grab them, to make them real, but they kept slipping through my fingers. 42 million. I repeated, give or take. The accountants are still finalizing the valuation. But that's the ballpark. I put the water bottle down. My hands were shaking again. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. He leaned forward. But I need you to listen to me carefully. The estate is yours. There's no contesting it. The will is airtight. Theodore had the best lawyers money could buy. But there's something else you need to know. I looked at him. The people at that party, he said. Your family. They've already tried to contest the will. They filed a petition with the court 2 weeks ago. They claimed Theodore was mentally incompetent when he drafted the document. They lost. The judge threw it out. I remembered the way Harold's face had gone pale when he heard Mr. Sterling's name. They knew about the inheritance. They knew there was an inheritance. They didn't know the amount. And they didn't know who the beneficiary was. Theodore kept that information sealed until after his death. By the time they found out it was you, it was too late. Mr. Sterling's eyes glinted. They're not going to let this go, Michael. They're going to fight you. Every step of the way. They can try, I said. That's what I like to hear. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. This is the will. This is the trust document. And this is a list of the assets. I want you to take your time. Read it carefully. And then I want you to tell me what you want to do. I opened the folder. The first page was a legal document, dense with words I didn't fully understand. But the numbers at the bottom were unmistakable. Millions and millions of dollars that I flipped through the pages. Properties. Investments. A trust fund that had been established in my name 30 years ago, before I was born, before my father was even married. How long did Theodore plan this? I asked. Years, Mr. Sterling said. He'd been keeping track of you since you were a boy. He knew about your divorce. He knew about your father's death. He knew about the trailer. He wanted to reach out. He even wrote you a letter once. But he never sent it. Why not? Because he was afraid you'd reject him. Like your father did. Like the rest of the family did. Mr. Sterling paused. I think he regretted that. I think he regretted a lot of things. But he wanted you to have this, Michael. He wanted you to have a chance at the life you deserved. I closed the folder. My head was spinning. $42 million. A trust fund. Commercial properties in California. It was too much. Too fast. Too impossible. What do I have to do? I asked. Nothing, Mr. Sterling said. The money is yours. Free and clear. No strings attached. But I'll tell you what I'd do in your position. What's that? I'd make them pay. His voice was flat. Every single one of them. Harold forged documents. He committed fraud. He stole from your father. He stole from you. I can prove it. I've already started building the case. If you want, we can take him to court. We can take all of them to court. And what would happen to them? They'd lose everything, Mr. Sterling said. Every dollar they've ever stolen. Every property they've ever bought with stolen money. Every investment they've ever made. They'd be left with nothing. Exactly what they left your father. Exactly what they left you. I thought about my father. I thought about him in that garage, working on cars for people who never paid him enough. I thought about the way he'd refuse to talk about Harold. The way his jaw would tighten whenever the name came up. The way he'd change the subject as quickly as he could. I thought about the trailer I lived in. The leaky roof. The sagging floors. The way I'd wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, sweating through my sheets. Worried about how I was going to make ends meet. That I thought about Brenda laughing at me. Mark mocking me. Harold calling me a failure. I want to think about it. I said. Mr. Sterling nodded. Take all the time you need. But I'll tell you this. The longer you wait, the more time they have to cover their tracks. Harold knows I'm involved now. He knows the inheritance is yours. He's going to start scrambling. That's what guilty people do. Then let him scramble, I said. I'm done being scared of him. Mr. Sterling smiled. It was a full smile this time, and it transformed his face. Made him look younger. Sharper. I knew I liked you, Michael. I could see it in the way you stood in that driveway. You're not a man who backs down. You never have been. I stood up. I need to go home. I need to think. Of course. He stood too. He pulled a card out of his pocket and handed it to me. This is my personal cell number. Call me anytime. Night or day. And Michael. Yeah. The next time you see your family, I want you to remember something. They laughed at you because they were afraid of you. Afraid of what you represented. Afraid that one day, you'd prove them wrong. And now you can. I took the card. I put it in my pocket. And I walked out of that office with a weight lifted off my shoulders that I'd been carrying my entire life. The drive back to the trailer was a blur. I don't remember the traffic. I don't remember the highway. I don't remember pulling into the gravel lot or climbing out of the truck or unlocking the door. I just remember standing in the middle of my tiny living room, looking at the holes in the ceiling, the cracks in the walls, the worn-out furniture that had belonged to my grandmother. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel sorry for myself. That I felt something else. Something that burned in my chest like a fire. Something that felt like hope and anger and purpose all mixed together. That I sat down on the couch. The springs groaned under my weight. I opened the folder Mr. Sterling had given me and started reading. Page by page. Line by line. I read until my eyes blurred and my head ached and the sun went down outside the window. Then I read it all over again. By the time I looked up, it was dark. The trailer was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the gravel lot. My truck was parked in its usual spot. The bungee cord holding the door shut. The missing tailgate. The rust spreading across the wheel wells. It looked like a piece of junk. But I saw it differently now. I saw it as the thing that had carried me through the worst years of my life. The thing that had never let me down. The thing that had been there when no one else was. I grabbed my keys. I walked outside. I climbed into the truck and started the engine. The cough and sputter that had always annoyed me now sounded like a battle cry. I drove to the gas station. I filled the tank. For the first time in months, I didn't count the pennies. I drove to the grocery store. I bought real food. Steak. Vegetables. A bottle of wine that cost $15. When the cashier rang it up, I didn't flinch. I drove home. I cooked dinner. I ate until I was full. And then I sat down and called Mr. Sterling. I made my decision. I said, "What is it? I want to make them pay," I said. "Every single one of them. But not for me. Not for the money. For my father. They took his life. They took his dignity. And they laughed while they did it. I want justice." Mr. Sterling was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something I couldn't quite identify. Pride, maybe. Satisfaction. "I'm going to make you a promise, Michael," he said. "By the time I'm done with them, they're going to wish they'd never heard your name. They're going to wish they'd been kind. They're going to wish they'd been better people. Let's get to work." I said that I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my mattress in the dark, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like the state of Florida. My mind kept churning through images that wouldn't stop. The first time I met Sarah, she was waiting tables at a diner off the interstate. I was 22 years old, fresh out of a trade school that had taught me nothing I didn't already know from my grandfather. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. I wore a flannel shirt with a hole in the elbow. I ordered coffee because I couldn't afford breakfast. She brought me coffee and a plate of eggs anyway. "You look like you need this," she said. "On the house." I fell in love with her right there. We got married 6 months later. Justice of the peace. No family on either side. My father came, but he stood in the back and didn't say much. Harold didn't come. Said he had a golf game. I didn't care. I had Sarah. That was all that mattered. We moved into a tiny apartment above a laundromat. The walls were thin. The neighbors were loud. The washing machines below us hummed and vibrated day and night. But it was ours. We painted the kitchen yellow. We bought a couch from a thrift store. We made plans. Sarah wanted children. I wanted children too. But we couldn't afford them. I was working 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Construction during the day. Mechanic work at night. Odd jobs on weekends. I was never home. I was never not exhausted. I remember coming home one night around midnight. Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table, still in her waitress uniform. There were bills spread out in front of her. Electric, water, medical, a stack of them that never seemed to get smaller. "We can't do this anymore," she said. Her voice was quiet. Not angry, just tired. Tired in a way that broke my heart. "I'll find another job," I said. "You have 3 jobs, Michael. You can't find a 4th. I'll work harder." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw it in her eyes. The resignation, the loss, the same look my mother had given my father before she left. "I don't want you to work harder," she said. "I want you to be here. I want a life, not just survival." I didn't have an answer for her. I still don't. She left 3 months later. The divorce was fast. She didn't ask for anything. I tried to give her the apartment. She wouldn't take it. I tried to give her the money I'd saved. She wouldn't take that either. "You need it more than I do," she said. And she was right. But I sent her checks anyway. Every month. $100. Sometimes 50. Whatever I could scrape together. She never cashed them. I found out later she'd kept them in a shoebox under her bed. All of them. Every single one. She said they reminded her of why she'd fallen in love with me in the first place. I saw her at the grocery store once, 2 years after she remarried. She had a baby in her cart. A little girl with curly hair and Sarah's eyes. I almost didn't say anything. I almost turned around and walked away. But she saw me first. She smiled. She said my name like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like we were old friends who'd lost touch. She asked how I was doing. I said fine. She asked if I was happy. I said yes. I lied. She told me she was happy. I could see it in her face. I could see it in the way she held her daughter. She was happy. And that was enough. That was all I ever wanted for her. I walked away from that grocery store and got into my truck. I sat there for an hour, not moving, just staring at the steering wheel. And I made a promise to myself. I would never be the reason someone was unhappy again. That's why I stayed poor. That's why I never asked for help. That's why I let Harold and Mark and Brenda say whatever they wanted. Because I believed I deserved it. I believed I had failed. I believed the voices that told me I was worthless. I lay in the dark, tracing the water stain with my eyes, and I felt the weight of all those years pressing down on me like a tombstone. But something else was stirring too. A flicker. A small, stubborn flame that refused to go out. I remembered the look on Harold's face when Mr. Sterling told him about the inheritance. That pale, bloodless, shattered look. Like the ground had opened up beneath him and swallowed everything he'd ever known. I wanted to see that look again. I got out of bed. It was 3 in the morning. I walked to the small desk in the corner of the trailer and pulled open the drawer. Inside was a stack of old photographs. I flipped through them, letting my fingers linger on the faces of people who had long since stopped matching. There was a picture of my father at his garage. He was holding a wrench, grinning at the camera. The smile didn't reach his eyes. It never did. But he was trying. He was always trying. I took the picture and held it up. "They're going to pay," I whispered. "They're going to pay for every single thing they did to you. To us. I promise." I put the picture in my pocket. Then I picked up the phone and called Mr. Sterling. "I want to see them," I said. "All of them. Tomorrow. At Harold's house. And I want you there with me." "Are you sure?" Mr. Sterling asked. "That's going to be a confrontation. That's the point." I didn't sleep after that. I showered. I shaved. I put on the only decent pair of jeans I owned and a clean blue button-down shirt. The shirt had a small tear at the collar, but it was the best I had. I polished my boots. I ran a comb through my hair. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. I saw a man who had spent his whole life apologizing for existing. A man who had accepted scraps and called them feasts. That man was gone. I drove to Harold's house at 9 in the morning. The same house with the manicured lawn and the circular driveway. The same house where I'd been laughed at and humiliated less than 24 hours earlier. Mr. Sterling's Lincoln was already parked at the curb. He was leaning against the hood, holding a briefcase, looking like he'd just stepped off the cover of a magazine. "Good morning, Michael," he said. "You look like a man on a mission." "I am." He nodded. "I've contacted all of them. They're inside. They're nervous. They should be." We walked up the driveway together. Through the gate. Past the patio where the buffet table had been. The table was gone. The shattered plates were gone. Everything had been cleaned up like it had never happened. But I could still feel the echo of it. The laughter. The shame. Harold opened the front door before I could knock. He looked like he hadn't slept either. His eyes were bloodshot. His shirt was untucked. He was holding a glass of something amber. "Michael," he said. His voice was strained. "Come in." I walked past him. Mr. Sterling followed. The house smelled like stale cigarettes and nervous sweat. The living room was packed. Mark was there. Brenda. Aunt Patricia. Uncle Walter. Cousin Jennifer. A dozen others. All of them looking at me like I was a bomb that was about to go off. "Sit down," Harold said. "Please. I think we need to talk." "I'll stand," I said. Harold's face twitched. He was used to being in charge. Used to telling people what to do. Used to being the king of his own little castle. But he wasn't the king anymore. He was just a man standing in his own living room, trying to figure out how to keep what he'd stolen. "Look, Michael," he said. "I know you're angry. I know you feel like we've wronged you. And maybe we have. Maybe we've made some mistakes. But we're family. We've always been family. And family forgives." I stared at him. "Family forgives, of course." He spread his hands, palms up. "That's what family does. We make mistakes, and we forgive each other. That's how it works." "Did you forgive my father?" The room went silent. I saw Mark look at the floor. Brenda looked at the ceiling. Harold's face went through a series of contortions, like he was trying to find the right expression and couldn't quite land on one. "Your father was a complicated man," Harold said finally. "No," I said. "He wasn't. He was a simple man. A good man. A man who worked hard and never complained and asked for nothing. A man who trusted his brother. A man who was stolen from. By you." Harold's face went pale again. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You know exactly what I'm talking about." My voice was steady. Steady in a way I'd never heard it before. "The business. The trust. The forged documents. I have proof. Mr. Sterling has proof. We can take it to the police. We can take it to the courts. We can take it wherever we need to take it. And we will." Mark stepped forward. "That's enough. You can't just come in here and make accusations like that." "I'm not making accusations," I said. "I'm stating facts. Harold stole from my father. He committed fraud. He's been lying to this family for years. And you all knew about it. Every single one of you. You knew, and you didn't do anything." Aunt Patricia's face crumpled. "That's not true. Did you know?" I looked at her. "When Harold sold the business, did you know it wasn't his to sell?" She didn't answer. She just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. "She knew," I said. "They all knew. They knew, and they looked the other way. Because it was convenient. Because Harold was rich, and Harold was powerful, and nobody wanted to get on his bad side." "That's not how it was," Brenda said. Her voice was trembling. "We didn't know." "You knew," I said. "You've always known. You just didn't care. None of you cared. You laughed at me yesterday. You laughed because I was poor. You laughed because I was struggling. You laughed because it made you feel better about yourselves. No one said anything. They just stood there, frozen, like deer caught in headlights. I'm not here to apologize, I said. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I'm not even here to hear your excuses. I'm here to tell you what's going to happen next. Harold swallowed hard. What's going to happen next? I looked at Mr. Sterling. He nodded and opened his briefcase. He pulled out a document and handed it to me. This is a cease and desist order, I said. All of you are named in it. You are not to speak to me. You are not to contact me. You are not to come within 500 feet of my home, my workplace, or my property. If you do, I will have you arrested. You can't be serious, Mark said. I'm dead serious. I handed the document to Harold. And this is a notice of intent to sue. For fraud. For embezzlement. For defamation. For everything you've done to me and my father over the past 30 years. Harold took the document. His hands were shaking. You're ruining us. No, I said. You ruined yourselves. You did this. You made these choices. And now you get to live with the consequences. I walked toward the door. Mr. Sterling followed. I paused at the threshold and turned around. They were all still standing there, frozen, their faces a mix of shock and terror. You laughed at me, I said. You made me feel like I was nothing, like I was a waste of space, like I didn't deserve to exist. But I want you to know something. I'm not nothing. I was never nothing. And now I have the power to prove it. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. The first thing I did was buy a suit. Not a cheap one from a discount store. A real suit. The kind that comes with a tailor who measures your inseam and asks about your cuff preferences. I walked into the store on Michigan Avenue, and the sales clerk looked at my boots and my torn collar and almost turned me away. Then I pulled out the cash and showed him what I could afford, and his entire demeanor changed. The suit was charcoal gray. The shirt was white. The tie was deep burgundy. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the man staring back at me. He looked like someone who belonged in a boardroom. He looked like someone who had never known what it was like to count nickels for a gallon of milk. That I bought 3 suits that day, and 6 shirts, and a pair of shoes that cost more than my truck. That the second thing I did was call Sarah. I hadn't spoken to her in 3 years. I didn't even know if she still had the same number. But I dialed it anyway, and she answered on the second ring. Michael, her voice was confused. Is that you? It's me, I said. I need to see you. I need to tell you something. Are you okay? What's wrong? I'm fine. More than fine. Can we meet at the diner? The old one. Tomorrow at noon. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Okay, she said finally. I'll be there. The next day, I drove to the diner. The same diner where I'd met her 22 years ago. The same cracked vinyl booths. The same stale coffee smell. The same waitress. No, a different waitress, but she looked the same. Like nothing had changed. Sarah was already there. She was sitting in the booth where we used to sit. The booth in the back, near the window, where we could watch the trucks roll by on the interstate. She was wearing a simple sundress. No makeup. Her hair was shorter, but she was still beautiful. She would always be beautiful. I slid into the booth across from her. She looked at me. Her eyes went wide. Michael, she said. You look different. I smiled. Different, she repeated. You look like a different person. What happened? I told her everything. The inheritance, the lawyer, the confrontation at Harold's house. I told her about the fraud, about the stolen business, about the years of lies and the moments of humiliation. I told her about my father and about the weight I'd been carrying my whole life. That she listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were warm, familiar. I always knew you were meant for more, she said. I always believed in you, even when you didn't believe in yourself. I squeezed her hand. I know, and I never thank you for that. For everything. For staying as long as you did. For believing in me when nobody else did. She smiled. The same smile that had made me fall in love with her all those years ago. You don't have to thank me. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because I loved you. I know. And I never stopped loving you either. I couldn't give you what you needed. I couldn't give you the life you deserved. You gave me what you could, she said. And I'll always be grateful for that. I looked at her. The woman I had loved. The woman I had lost. The woman I would always wonder about. Are you happy? Sarah, really happy, she nodded. I am. I have a good life. A good husband. A beautiful daughter. I'm not rich, but I'm happy. That's more than a lot of people can say. Good, I said. That's what I wanted for you. That's all I ever wanted for you. We sat there for another hour, talking, laughing, remembering. It felt like no time had passed at all, like we were still young and in love and full of hope. When I walked her to her car, she hugged me. She held me tight for a long moment. Take care of yourself, Michael. You deserve this. You deserve every good thing that's coming to you. I watched her drive away, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the ache of loss. I felt something else. Peace. Closure. A door that had finally shut, so I could open another. The third thing I did was go to my father's grave that I'd been going every Sunday for 3 years. Rain or shine. I'd bring flowers. I'd sit and talk to him. But this time, I brought something different. I brought the folder from Mr. Sterling. I brought the proof of what Harold had done. I knelt down in the grass and laid the folder on the headstone. I know now, Dad, I said. I know everything. I know what he did to you. I know what he stole. And I'm going to make it right. I waited for a response. I didn't get one, but I felt it. A warmth in my chest. A feeling that he was there. That he could hear me. I'm going to use the money, I said. I'm going to use it to do what you would have done. I'm going to help people. The ones who can't help themselves. The ones who get laughed at and kicked around and told they're worthless. Because I know what that feels like. And I'm never going to let anyone feel that way again. I stayed there for 2 hours. Talking. Crying. Letting go of the anger I'd been holding onto for decades. I wasn't forgiving Harold. I wasn't forgiving any of them. But I was forgiving myself. For the guilt. For the shame. For the belief that I deserved less. That the fourth thing I did was call Mr. Sterling and tell him to make the first move. File the lawsuit, I said. Go after everything. Don't stop until every penny is accounted for. Are you sure? Mr. Sterling asked. Once I file, there's no going back. I don't want to go back. I want to go forward. All the way. Mr. Sterling filed the lawsuit the next day. I watched from my new apartment, a 2-bedroom on the north side of the city, with real walls and a roof that didn't leak and a view of the skyline. I watched from the window as the papers were served to Harold, to Mark, to Brenda, to every one of them. I could picture their faces. The shock, the terror, the realization that their comfortable lives were about to come crashing down. The fifth thing I did was the hardest. I went to the bank. I walked into the branch where I'd been banking for 15 years. The tellers knew me. They knew my account balance. They knew I was poor. They knew I was barely scraping by. I walked up to the counter and asked to see the branch manager. The manager was a man named Frank. He'd been there for years. He'd smiled at me when I came in to deposit my meager checks. He'd nodded sympathetically when I overdrew my account and couldn't pay the fees. But I'd never seen him look at me the way he looked at me that day. Mr. Radcliffe, he said, his voice trembling. Please, come into my office. I followed him into the back. He closed the door. His hands were shaking. I just got the call, he said. We were notified that your trust fund is being transferred to this institution. We'll need some time to process everything. Take your time, I said. I'm not in a hurry. He stared at me. Do you understand how much money we're talking about? I have a general idea. It's the largest account we've ever handled, he said. We're going to need to assign you a personal banker. We're going to need to set up meetings. We're going to need to. I don't need a personal banker, I said. I just need you to open a second account, a checking account, and I need you to wire money into it every week. How much? He asked. I told him the amount. His eyes went wide. Why so much? Because I'm going to give it away, I said. Every week. To people who need it. I'm going to start a foundation. I'm going to help people who are where I was. People who can't see a way out. People who need someone to believe in them. Frank stared at me. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then he shook his head slowly, a smile spreading across his face. Your father would be proud. He said, You think so? I know so. The sixth thing I did was wait. I waited for the lawsuit to progress. I waited for the foundation to be set up. I waited for the money to start flowing. But mostly, I waited for the phone to ring. It rang on a Thursday afternoon. I was at my new apartment, drinking coffee, looking out at the city. I picked up the phone and heard Mark's voice on the other end. Michael, he said. His voice was tight. We need to talk. I don't have anything to say to you. Please, just listen. I know we've made mistakes. I know we've treated you badly. But we're family. You can't just walk away from family. I can. I am. And I don't want to hear your excuses. It's not an excuse, he said. It's an explanation. We were scared, Michael. All of us. We were scared of you. Scared of what you represented. Scared that one day you'd be stronger than us. And that day is here. I let his words sit for a moment. I wanted to feel satisfaction. I wanted to feel vindicated. But I didn't. I just felt tired. What do you want? I asked. I want to fix this, he said. I want to make amends. I want to sit down and figure out a way forward. All of us. Together. Mark, I said. Do you remember the day you laughed at me at the party? You said I was collecting cans. You said I was a failure. I remember, he said quietly. Did you mean it? There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing. I meant it at the time, he said. But I didn't know. I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know who you were going to become. I'm not becoming anyone, I said. I'm the same person I've always been. You just never bothered to look. I hung up the phone. Mark called back 3 times. I didn't answer. Brenda called twice. I didn't answer. My Aunt Patricia left a voicemail that was so garbled with tears I couldn't understand it. Harold called once. He didn't leave a message that they were scared. Good. They should be scared. But the fear didn't fill the hole in my chest. The anger didn't make the pain go away. The money didn't erase the years of humiliation. The only thing that could do that was something else entirely. Something I was still trying to figure out. The 7th thing I did was start the foundation that we called it the Radcliffe Family Foundation. I hated using my name for it, but Mr. Sterling insisted. It'll give it credibility, he said. And it'll remind people that you came from something, that you built something. The foundation was simple. We gave money to people who needed it. People who'd been kicked down and kicked again. People who were counting nickels at the gas station. People who were fixing transmissions for $40 and a 6-pack. We didn't ask for anything in return. No paperwork. No applications. Just a handshake and a promise to pay it forward. We started small. A single mother in the next town over who needed a new roof. A veteran who couldn't afford his medications. A family whose house had been foreclosed on. We paid their bills. We gave them hope. And every time I saw their faces, I saw my own. The 8th thing I did was the strangest. I went back to Harold's house. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I just got in my new truck, a Ford F-250 with 4-wheel drive and heated seats and a stereo system that cost more than my old truck was worth. I drove to the same house with the manicured lawn and the circular driveway. The lawn wasn't manicured anymore. The grass had grown wild. The flower beds were overrun with weeds. The shutters were peeling. Harold's Tesla was gone. In its place was an old Honda Civic with a dented door. I walked up to the front door and knocked. Harold answered. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the 2 weeks since I'd seen him. His shirt was rumpled. His hair was gray. His eyes were sunken. Michael, he said. I didn't think you'd come. I didn't think I would either. I looked past him into the house. The furniture was the same, but everything looked smaller, dimmer, like the life had been sucked out of it. Come in, he said. Please. I want to show you something. I followed him into the living room. He walked to a desk in the corner and picked up a framed photograph. He handed it to me. It was a picture of my father and Harold when they were young, maybe 20 years old. They were standing in front of the garage where my grandfather used to work. Both of them were smiling. Both of them looked happy. I found this in the attic, Harold said. After everything happened, I'd forgotten I had it. I looked at the photograph. My father's face was young and open, full of hope, full of dreams. He looked like a man who believed in the future, who believed in his brother. Look at us, Harold said. His voice was thick. Look at what we were, what we could have been, and look at what I did to him, to you. I destroyed everything. I didn't say anything. I just held the photograph. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Harold said. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for what I did to your father. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I'm sorry for all the years I wasted being angry and jealous and cruel. I looked at him. This man who had been my enemy for as long as I could remember. This man who had humiliated me and stolen from me and broken my family. I saw the photograph. I saw 2 boys who had once loved each other, who had shared a childhood, who had dreamed the same dreams. I'm not going to forgive you, I said. Not now? Maybe not ever. But I want you to know something. I'm not going to destroy you either. Harold looked up. His eyes were wet. What? The lawsuit is staying, I said. You're going to pay back every penny you stole. But I'm not going to bankrupt you. I'm not going to take your house. I'm not going to leave you with nothing. You're not. No. I put the photograph down on the desk. Because that would make me just like you. And I'm not like you. I'm never going to be like you. I walked to the door. I paused at the threshold and turned back. One more thing, I said. The foundation is going to be helping people. People like me. People who don't have anyone else. You're going to get a letter in the mail every month. showing exactly where your money is going. I want you to see it. I want you to remember what it feels like to help someone. I walked out of that house one last time that the lawsuit landed like a bomb. I watched from a distance as the legal system did what it does best, grind slowly but thoroughly. Mr. Sterling sent me updates every few days. Depositions, discovery, motions and counter-motions. Each update was a small victory. Each one brought me closer to the end that Harold's lawyer tried everything. He filed motions to dismiss. He filed motions to delay. He filed motions to seal the records. Every single one was denied. The judge was a woman named Patricia Chun, and she had zero tolerance for games. She'd seen the evidence. She'd read the depositions. She knew exactly what had happened. You have a very angry judge on your side, Mr. Sterling told me over the phone. She doesn't like fraud. She really doesn't like fraud when it's committed against family. Good, I said. Let her be angry. The first big break came 3 weeks into the case. Harold's accountant flipped. He turned over records that showed exactly how much had been stolen and where it had gone. Offshore accounts, shell companies, investments that had been made with money that was never Harold's to spend up. Mr. Sterling called me at 6 in the morning. We have him, he said. He's done. There's no way out. Does he know? He knows. His lawyer is trying to negotiate a settlement. I told him no. No. I told him we're going to trial. We're going to make this public. We're going to let the whole world know what he did. I hung up the phone and walked to the window. The city was waking up below me. Cars moving through the streets. People heading to work. Normal people with normal lives. My life wasn't normal anymore. And I was finally okay with that. The trial lasted 6 days. I testified on the second day. I sat in the witness box and told the story of my life. The trailer. The hunger. The nights I couldn't sleep because I was worried about how I would pay the electric bill. The morning I woke up and found my wife had left. The laughter at the party. The words that had been said to me. The words that had been said about me. The jury watched me the whole time. They didn't look away. They didn't check their phones. They just listened. And when I was done, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Harold testified too. He tried to lie. He tried to deflect. He tried to blame my father. But the evidence was too strong. The documents were too clear. He broke down on the stand. He started crying. He admitted everything. I sat in the gallery and watched him fall apart. I waited for the satisfaction to come. I waited for the sense of victory. It didn't come. All I felt was tired. Tired and hollow and emptied. The jury was out for 4 hours. When they came back, they had reached a unanimous verdict. Guilty on all counts. Fraud. Embezzlement. Defamation. Everything we'd charged him with. The judge announced the sentence. Restitution. Every penny stolen, plus interest. Civil penalties. Legal fees. And a permanent injunction that barred Harold from ever serving as a director or officer of any publicly traded company. His life was over. Not in a jail cell, but in every way that mattered. He'd lost everything. His money. His reputation. His legacy. Everything he'd spent his life building was gone. I watched him being led out of the courtroom. He looked small, broken, like a man who had finally realized that he wasn't the king of his own castle. He was just a thief who'd been caught. Mark and Brenda and the others settled out of court. They didn't have a choice. The evidence against them was too strong. They signed agreements to pay back what they'd taken. They signed agreements to never speak to me again. I didn't care. I didn't want to see them again. I didn't want to hear their voices. I didn't want to think about them at all. The money started flowing. The restitution payments came in. The foundation grew. We hired staff. We opened offices. We started helping more people. Hundreds. Thousands. People who didn't have to count nickels anymore. But there was one thing left to do. I called a family meeting. Not at Harold's house. At a community center on the south side of the city. A place where real people came to get help. A place that felt honest. They all showed up. Every single one of them. Mark. Brenda. Aunt Patricia. Uncle Walter. The cousins. The second cousins. The in-laws. All of them looking sheepish and scared and uncertain. I stood at the front of the room. I looked out at them. These people who had humiliated me. Who had stolen from me. Who had laughed at my suffering. Thank you for coming, I said. I know this isn't easy. I know you're all scared. You should be. I paused. I let the silence stretch. I'm not here to gloat. I'm not here to humiliate you. I'm here to say something that I should have said a long time ago. Something that I need you to hear. I walked to the center of the room. I looked at each of them in turn. You took everything from my father, I said. You took his business. You took his dignity. You took his hope. And then you took everything from me. You made me feel like I was nothing. You made me feel like I didn't deserve to exist. And I let you do it. I let you because I believed you were right. I believed I was worthless. I saw Mark shift uncomfortably. I saw Brenda look at the floor. I saw my Aunt Patricia start to cry. But I'm not worthless, I said. I was never worthless. And the only reason any of you ever made me feel that way is because you were scared. You were scared that I'd figure out what you'd done. You were scared that I'd be stronger than you. And you were right to be scared. Because now I am. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it and held it up. This is a check, I said. It's made out to all of you. It's for the exact amount that you owe me. Every penny. Plus interest. I could cash this check. I could take this money and buy whatever I wanted. I could go to the Caribbean and never think about any of you again. I paused. I let them wonder, but I'm not going to cash it, I said. I'm going to donate it. Every cent. To the foundation. To help people who actually need it. There was a murmur of confusion from the crowd. Mark stepped forward. I don't understand. Of course you don't. I folded the check and put it back in my pocket. You've never understood anything. You've never understood what it means to give. What it means to help. What it means to be part of something bigger than yourself. I took a breath. I steadied myself. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to leave this room, and you're going to go home. And you're going to think about what you've done. Every single thing. The fraud. The lies. The cruelty. You're going to think about it, and you're going to live with it. Because that's your punishment. And then, Mark asked, and then you're going to rebuild your lives. You're going to find honest work. You're going to be better people. And one day, maybe, you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror without shame. I walked to the door. I paused at the threshold. I turned back to face them. One more thing, I said. The foundation is going to need volunteers. People to help with the work. People who understand what it's like to struggle. People who want to make a difference. If any of you want to help, you can sign up on your way out. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out of that room and never looked back. 2 months later, the first volunteer application came in. It was from Brenda. I didn't hire her. I didn't trust her. I didn't believe she'd changed. But I didn't turn her away either. I told her she could start at the bottom. Sorting donations. Answering phones. Doing the work that no one else wanted to do. She showed up the next day. And the day after that. And the day after that. She worked hard. She didn't complain. She didn't try to get special treatment. She just did the work. I watched her from across the room sometimes. I could see her changing. Not dramatically. Not quickly. But slowly. Like a stone being worn smooth by water. 6 months later, I promoted her. She became the volunteer coordinator. She was good at it. She cared about the people we were helping. She remembered their names. She remembered their stories. I asked her about it once. We were sitting in my office, going over the numbers for the month. I put down my pen and looked at her. Why are you doing this? I asked. She looked at me. Her eyes were clear. No shame. No guilt. Just honesty. Because I was wrong, she said. I was wrong about everything. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about the way I treated you. I was wrong about the way I lived my life. And I want to make it right. Not for you. Not for the money. For me. Because I want to be a person I can be proud of. I nodded. That's a start. It's everything. She said. Mark showed up 3 months later. He didn't ask for a job. He asked to donate his time. He showed up every Saturday, rain or shine. He helped with the food drives. He helped with the housing program. He helped with anything we asked him to do. We never talked about the past. We never talked about the trial. We just worked. Aunt Patricia came too. She was older, slower, but she had a heart for the work. She sat with the elderly clients and held their hands and told them she understood what it was like to be alone. I didn't forgive them. I don't think I ever will. But I stopped hating them. The most important thing happened 5 years after the trial. I was walking through the foundation's main office. We'd grown a lot since the beginning. We had 30 employees now, a full floor in a downtown office building, a reputation as one of the most effective charities in the state. I walked past the front desk and saw a woman sitting in the waiting area. She looked familiar. She was looking at the floor. Her hands were folded in her lap. I walked closer. She looked up. It was Sarah. I didn't know you were coming. I said, I didn't know I was coming either, she said. I needed to talk to you. I let her into my office. She sat down in the chair across from my desk. She looked nervous. Her hands were shaking. What's wrong? I asked. She took a deep breath. My husband left me. 6 months ago. He took everything. The house. The car. Our savings. He said he couldn't handle the pressure anymore. He said he needed to start over. I felt my heart drop. I'm so sorry. She shook her head. Don't be. I should have seen it coming. I was too blind. Too trusting. I thought he was different. I thought he would never hurt me. She looked at me. Her eyes were wet. I don't have anything, Michael. I don't have a job. I don't have a place to live. I don't have anyone to turn to. And I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I'm the one who left. I know I'm the one who gave up. But I need help. And I didn't know where else to go. I sat there for a moment. The woman I had loved. The woman I had lost. The woman who had broken my heart. She was sitting in my office, asking for help. I have a rule, I said. I don't give money to people who come to me directly. That's what the foundation is for. I help people through the system. Through the process. She nodded. I understand. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come. Wait, I said. Let me finish. I leaned forward. I have a rule for the foundation. But I don't have a rule for myself. And I've spent the past 5 years helping everyone except myself. I think it's time I made an exception. Her eyes widened. Michael, I can't. Let me finish, I said. I'm going to help you, Sarah. Not through the foundation. Not through the system. Through me. Because you helped me. When I had nothing. When I was nobody. You believed in me. And I never forgot that. She started to cry. Not the tears of sadness. The tears of relief. The tears of someone who had been drowning and suddenly found a hand reaching down to pull her out. You don't have to do this, she said. Yes, I said. I do. Because that's who I am now. That's who I became. Not because of the money. Not because of the lawsuit. Because of everything that happened before. Because of the years I spent being poor and being ashamed and being treated like nothing. I made a promise to myself, and I intend to keep it. I helped Sarah get back on her feet. I found her an apartment. I paid the first 6 months' rent. I helped her find a job. I helped her rebuild her life that she asked me once, months later, why I did it. Why I helped her after everything she'd done. Why I didn't hold it against her that I thought about it for a long time before I answered. Because love isn't transactional, I said. It's not about keeping score. It's about showing up. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. I loved you once. And the man I used to be would have let that love turn to bitterness. But I'm not that man anymore. She looked at me. What happened to you, Michael? What changed? I smiled. I stopped being afraid. I stopped being ashamed. I stopped believing I was worthless. And once I did that, I realized that the only thing that mattered was being the person I wanted to be, not the person other people told me to be. Sarah and I didn't get back together. We were different people now. We'd lived different lives. But we became friends. Real friends. The kind of friends who showed up for each other when it mattered. She's doing well now. She has a new job, a new apartment, a new sense of purpose. And she's helping people too. She volunteers at the foundation every Saturday. She's good at it, but she said something to me once that stayed with me. You know what the best part is, she asked. The best part is that you didn't just change your life. You changed everyone else's too. You gave them something they never had before. Hope. I thought about that. I thought about all the people we'd helped. The families who'd kept their homes. The veterans who'd gotten their medication. The kids who'd gone to college who never thought they'd have a chance. And I thought about my father. I thought about him standing in that garage, covered in grease, never complaining. I thought about what he would have said if he could see me now, that he would have been proud. Not because of the money. Not because of the foundation. Not because of the lawsuit, that he would have been proud because I had become the man he always knew I could be. A man who stood up for himself. A man who stood up for others. A man who didn't let the world break him. I still think about that day at the party sometimes. The laughter. The humiliation. The feeling of being nothing. But I don't feel it anymore. It's just a memory. A scar that's healed over. I built something with that money. Not a mansion. Not a yacht. Not a collection of things I didn't need. I built a legacy. A legacy of helping people. A legacy of giving people what I never had. And I did it without becoming like them. I did it without losing myself. I did it without letting the bitterness consume me. That, I think, is the real victory. My name is Michael Radcliffe. The money isn't what made me who I am. It's what I did with the money that matters. And that's something no one can ever take away from me. What's your story? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear it.